Okay, so Age-Friendly AI is a Research Ireland funded project. It's Ireland's national artificial intelligence literacy initiative for older adults. And it's led by TU Dublin and co-led by Dublin City University under the ADAPT Centre's Discuss AI program, which is a program of public engagement around AI. Um, we have also our project partners, Sticky Dot, who are joining us today. Um, just Sorry, now the Zoom is covering. Just to say that we have we have over 20 partners on the project who you can see here. So there's a broad range of different community partners. And we're very grateful to all of them for their support and expertise that they're bringing to the programme. Just to say, it is a 2-year project, and the first year was last year, 2025. So we began in early 2025, and the first year of the project was a dialogue phase. So this meant that we went out around the country to different libraries and community spaces, talking to older people about what their hopes, concerns and ideas for age-friendly AI, for a training program, and about AI more broadly. And from that dialogue phase, we gathered a lot of ideas and a lot of feedback from people, and has been taken into consideration when developing the training, which is rolling out this year across public libraries nationwide. And that's what we're going to be presenting today, the introductory module for that training. Let's see. So to date, just a little bit of background on numbers, and this video is just going to play through. This is some footage from an event that we ran in Kerry, in Clare, County Kerry, back at the end of last year. So we have reached over 8,000 people directly through different workshops and events. We've had kind of a deep dialogue with 380 people. That was in the dialogue phase last year in kind of small group workshops. To ensure that older adults' voices were represented in the program. We've been building those partnerships that I mentioned, and there's always opportunities for new partnerships. So if you did want to reach out to us to start a discussion there, we'd be happy to do that. And then we've also had, we have a media partnership with Senior Times and the 50 Plus show, and that's helping us to reach a wider audience still. In terms of our evaluation, so we run pre and post workshop surveys at all of our events, and I won't go into a load of graphs in this, but just to say that generally the participants do report an increased understanding of AI following participation in one of these workshops. Another way that we've been including people's voices in the project is through our free postcard campaign, and this was a collaboration with Libraries Ireland under the LGMA, the Local Government Management Agency. And these postcards are physically in libraries all around the country. And there's also an online portal for people to share their thoughts. And it's the same questions that I mentioned already around the hopes, concerns and ideas for age-friendly AI. And just to say, just before I hand over to Paula, all of the resources that we've developed throughout this program are added to our website, and we'll be sharing the links to everything that we mention, we'll send a follow-up email with the links afterwards. But just to say that everything that we kind of refer to is available on our website and is available for people to use and to adapt in whatever way that might work for them. And we'll talk a bit more, Paula will talk a bit more as we go through. So that's the end of the kind of introduction. So I'm going to stop sharing now and I'm going to hand over to Paula Kelly. So I'm going to mute myself. Paula, over to you.
Great, thanks, Emma. And good morning, everyone. And I'm delighted to see so many people on board. And as Emma mentioned, we've designed this module in particular that you don't need any prior experience with AI to be able to deliver it. So hopefully you'll get that sense of it as we go through. And if you have some experience, you can expand out and elaborate some of our notes on it to customize it for yourself. So the first thing I'm going to do is share my screen here, and somebody might confirm that you can see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Right. So this is the age-friendly AI homepage that we've developed, and we have a number of links out to it, but the one in particular for today is up here on the top right-hand side on your screens. So I'll click into that. That's the resources that we've developed. And what we're using today, if we scroll down, is this part of the resources webpage, the Introduction to AI workshop guide. So when I click into this link or this button, I'm brought into a link that shows this work plan that we've developed for anybody who would be willing to present this workshop in their own community or to their own group. And just a few things to note at the top of it, that the expected time to deliver this content is roughly 60 minutes. And that includes both the presentation and a number of interactive activities that are included and that we'll go through now as part of this workshop. And we're expecting that at the end of it, the participants, as it outlines there, will understand a little bit more about what AI is in general, that they'll be able to spot examples of it in their everyday life. And you'll see peppered throughout the presentation slides are everyday examples. Again, you can substitute if you have other ideas for what you might put in there. You're very welcome to substitute that as you deliver. And then we have a couple of slides on outlining key differences between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, where humans still hold supreme on that. And that usually generates a little bit of discussion. And we also talk about understanding how people's own personal information is used by AI systems. We go into a little bit about the laws that help protect people when they're working online. And we also point out a number of resources where they can do checks for mis and disinformation. So in particular, I'll show the links where we link out to Commissions na Mons, Media Literacy Ireland, Stop Think Check campaign. So that's a little bit of background on it. In terms of delivering the material itself, we suggest that you download the slides in advance. So we'll go through these slides now in detail in a few minutes. And then there are worksheets for each of the participants. That looks like this. So these are printed out in advance and handed out to each of the participants so they can follow along with the activities, maybe jot down some notes and complete whatever activities there are on it. We suggest that you bring a pen for each participant or ask the participants to bring their own. And finally, just to keep everything above board, we have this conversation code that we've developed where it's a guide, I guess, for all the participants to ensure that everybody has an equal chance to contribute in a civilized manner to the session. Okay, so I'm going to click in here into the presentation slides. And I'll just maximize that. And I'll just ask someone to confirm again that you can see my slides okay?
Yeah.
Taking a little bit of time to load up there I have to turn off that AI assistant that pops up automatically, rather annoyingly on the screen. And just to say, these are the slides here. and the accompanying speaker notes are down at the bottom. So for every slide you're going through, we have done up a script of what you can use, but by all means, you're very welcome to customize it if you're delivering this yourself to suit yourself. But if you haven't had so much experience, then all of these speaker notes accompany each slide. So I won't bring those up again unless somebody particularly wants me to on a particular page. And then the module is divided into 3 parts. So you could deliver it all in one session in the 60 minutes, or you could decide if it suits better to divide it up into 3 20-minute sessions, for example, and maybe run it over 3 different days or sessions, and supplement it with more discussion time. So it really does very much depend on how you'd like to deliver it yourself. In our workshop, we typically deliver the 3 parts, and it roughly takes 60 minutes to get through in total, or an hour and a half to get through the material, plus allow plenty of time for discussion afterwards. So after this...
Paul, it's a very quick question just in there, just about a definition of disinformation. I know you kind of get to it, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll take that in the end. Kerry, you might take note to remind me to come in. If there's still that question when I present towards the end, I'm very happy to take that. Is that okay? So you might just take note of that, so I'll be reminded. Okay, so we have part 1 is getting to know AI, and you'll notice that down here on the slides, you get an indication of what where in the module you are at any given point in time. So when we move on to part 2, 2 of these will be coloured in, and part 3, all 3 will be coloured in. And we also have the name of the part up here at the top. So, sorry, if I just go back here for a second. The parts are named Get to Know AI, Spot the Differences Between Human Intelligence and Artificial Intelligence, and Seeing Different Sides of AI is over here. So that's part 1, 2 and 3. And as we click into part 1, that title is used up at the top, and we know we're in part 1 because that's indicated down here on the slides. So the first thing is an interactive activity, and we ask for a show of hands, have you used AI today? And typically in a group of, say, 40 participants, which would be fairly what we generally expect to get in a workshop. Certainly in our discussion phase, maybe slightly smaller crew in the actual training workshop. So say between 20 and 30. Anyway, about 2 to 3 hands will go up. And then we give examples of where AI is embedded in everyday products and services that we use. Maybe people aren't so familiar with it. So, for example, we ask if anybody has come and used a weather app beforehand, or maybe used predictive text or paid with something with their mobile phone, or indeed, even if they haven't done any of those interactions online, maybe they might have passed a CCTV camera. And we say that AI is embedded everywhere here in these products and services. And then we ask again the question, have you used AI today? And typically many more hands will go up, almost all of them in the room. And so that generates a little bit of dialogue and conversation, I guess. And I use it to present the whole rationale for the project, that, you know, it's about developing the literacy skills and the confidence to realise that we are using AI in many products and services in our everyday lives. And that, I guess, instills a little bit of confidence in people to start talking about the impact that has. So that's a nice piece, and gets people, as I say, motivated to keep listening on. So with that in mind, we point them to the workshop sheet and to page 1 of where there's an activity where they can circle the images that we've presented in the previous examples of products and services where they use AI, and also to have a chat with the person beside them about if they realised whether these were in it or not, and also to think about maybe other products and services where they hadn't realised AI might have been embedded, and if they can write those down. So again, that generates a nice little bit of interaction between the participants at the table. And then we go into the different definition of AI. And in all of these definitions, what we're trying to do all the time is make it real and relatable and plain English speaking. So when we say it's smart enough to do tasks that usually need human thinking. We always have an example from everyday life, like recognizing a face or a flower in a photo. And again, the notes have extra examples, and you're welcome to edit those to suit your own ideas or take the ones that we presented. So finally, we go on, to the worksheet summary, and we outline that there's a summary of each of these definitions in their worksheet. So the idea is they work on the worksheet on the activities, but also it's a nice take home or take away from the training to remind them of what they've done, and also a place where they can refer back to for these summaries of what we've covered. Okay, so then we go into a few more definitions that are also included in the worksheet summary, like data and training. And again, we're making it in plain, accessible language. Data is about the AI system learns. And we go into a little bit more about algorithms being And then the next two slides are about learning. How does it learn over time? And about the importance of keeping a human in the loop. And again, that's developed out through the analogy of keeping a human in the loop at all times. So the summary of that is also included, and most people have a look at that point on the worksheet, and that's completing part one then of the module. Anything in particular there, Kerry, that's coming in on that?
No, just there was a small issue there with your screen freezing that someone noted, but yeah, it's back now. It's okay.
Okay, great. Okay, so moving on to part two, then we're looking at spot the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And again, we're taking examples from some of the apps we've already talked about, like the weather, but also in terms of being very useful in the whole health domain at making very early predictions and being able to trundle through a large amount of data, and then also alert us if there's fraudulent activity, for example, on our bank account, etc. So we talk about the benefits that AI brings in all of those. And these examples come directly from the information that we got through our dialogue phase throughout 2025 with the older adults. So these were key areas of interest to older adults around the use and benefits that they see for AI. We also give examples of recommender systems. So for example, in Netflix and YouTube, based on our listening and watching patterns, what it might recommend to us and the pros and cons of that, and how it mimics human language, for example, in predictive texts or in chatbots. All of these developed out in the speaker notes as well. And then we look at what it's not so good at and outline where the human intelligence still comes in to make moral and ethical decisions, where we can have sarcasm and it's picked up correctly by a human-to-human contact, and the importance of humans if we're looking for genuine comfort, particularly in crisis situations. And also we point out that the generative AI tools that have a lot of publicity around them at the moment, whilst they do generate new contents, it's not truly creative or innovative or original. And then we give a nice example of Gen AI tools being able to create new texts and images. And we show examples of two types of prompts, one being quite a generic one and it producing quite a generic photograph, and the second being a more detailed prompt and that giving, I guess, a more streamlined output from that. So that's a nice example that gets a bit of attention. And again, we outline that in the worksheet, just a reminder to everybody that there's a summary of all of these slides in their worksheet for their takeaway afterwards. And following that, as was in the previous case, at the end of part one, we're now at the end of part two, and you can see we are on part two. I should have pointed this out. And we're up, you can see that the part that we're on is referred to, part two is referred to as spot the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. So we have this activity here where we're asking the participants to check to indicate if they think it's art or AI. And actually, we're going to take a little break now from me presenting and ask you to do the same activity. So if you wouldn't mind putting into the chat, we've numbered the pictures here. So if you could put in like 1, whether you think it's art or AI, 2, whether you think it's art or AI. So 1, art or AI, whichever one you think, 2, art or AI, and so on. And we'll take a minute to do that. And I suppose the point, just to point out, the point of the exercise isn't so much getting it right or wrong, it's recognizing how difficult it can be, in fact, to decipher whether it's artificial intelligence created or whether it's a real human artist that's behind it.
So yeah, Paula, just to show you, there's loads of responses coming in there on the chat that everyone's having a go, and you can see how difficult it is to do.
Okay, great. I can't see the chat, Cara, so you might
No,
have
I know, yeah. No, loads of people are putting in their responses, yeah. And yeah, like it's like obviously it's a really difficult thing to be able to do because it's yeah.
Great. Okay, great that we had all that response. And as I say, we point out that it's not so much about getting it right or wrong, but it's about recognizing how difficult it is, in fact. And then we give a few tips, and these are all in the speaker notes. So we ask the audience to look out for the Campbell's. It has an extra M on the leg. There's an extra leg there. And there's an extra G on the condensed. So, or like it's misspelled condensed, it's a condensed on that one. And then we point out that this is a real piece of art, number 2. And, I depending on where I'm giving it. So we did a workshop in DCU, 2 workshops in DCU, in fact, with the Age Friendly University on Monday. And this piece of art is actually in a local restaurant close to DCU. So I was able to say, look, this piece of art is actually hanging down there. So try to personalise and adapt the presentation depending on where we are. And this is Starry Night, so that's probably well known. And again, somebody mentioned at one of our workshops, and we just picked up and had a little discussion around it, that because this is so well known, this piece of art, even if it was generated, it probably would hold fairly true to the original art. So conversations come from the audience and the participants who are like to feed into it. And then this one, how would you know it was generated? Somebody pointed, the one that I use to, and the speaker notes indicate that there's an unusual hands here. It's not so crisp, the image. But somebody else who clearly had some more artistic ability than me was able to say that the lighting was all wrong, that the shadows, based on the lighting coming in here at the windows, the shadows should cast somewhere else. So I still can't see it, even though it's been pointed out to me. But the point is, participants like to take a while, chat about this, engage with each other and help each other, I suppose, to come up with mechanisms for identifying it. Somebody else mentioned about not having, feeling very flat, the images feeling very flat, and etc.
And it's just coming here on the chat that somebody said that the AI versions of the images can be overly bright and perfected.
Yeah. And that's the type of engagement that we get from the audience. So it's, and we kind of like to, in all of it, in fact, and right throughout delivering it, we like to let the conversation flow, keeping in mind the timeline that we have to work with then, but a lot of people like to contribute their experiences, which is fantastic. Okay, and then we go through it and we point out which ones. Okay, I'm going to leave that there in a minute so everyone can check their own homework, and we go through it, as I say. So that's a nice worksheet activity that they're working off their worksheets on. And that concludes part 2. And we move on then to looking at different sides of artificial intelligence. So this is where we look at the benefits and the risks. And again, the benefits are, these come directly from the dialogue conversations that we had throughout 2025 and about 8 workshops where we gathered the data from and analysed it. So a lot of older people interested in supports for independent living. So thinking about smart home technologies like smart doorbells or fall detectors in their home, and also in improved healthcare, whether that's from wearing smartwatches or other devices that can pick up heart rate or sleep monitors, or various different devices that might be used for diabetes, etc. And also in terms of faster diagnosis in the actual medical centres themselves, so in hospital settings and so on. And then also social connection, whether that's voice assistance or being part of social media groups or contributing through WhatsApp groups, etc., and being able to keep in contact with each other. So big benefits there. And again, people also add in their own where they see their own benefits. That we have a nice activity where they can help identify that and have a chat in a group setting with other people at their table. And then the risks that have been identified are around privacy and security. So this gives us a chance just to mention GDPR and the Digital Services Act and the EU AI Act. Again, we don't go into them in any detail at all. We just point out that they are there to help protect our data, and there's some rights around it. And again, the speaker notes provide a little bit more detail there, but we're not expecting anyone delivering this to know these legalities inside out. Now we come on to the trust of mis and disinformation. So I usually say, look, in our age group, and I'm part of the older age category that this training is designed and developed for, grew up, expecting the news that we hear on the radio and the media channels that we consume, we expect it to be correct. And the newspaper we expect to read to have the correct, factually correct information. But increasingly so, particularly in an AI-driven world, this is might not be the case, or in a lot of cases is not the case. So we point out that misinformation is where we spread information, incorrect information by mistake. So the 2 misses help to remember that. And the disinformation is where false information is spread on purpose. So we have a brief discussion around that. And then we just mentioned that AI is going to compound this digital divide and an AI divide, those who can access the services and products and understand AI and those who don't. And this literacy training is trying to help narrow that divide in as best as can by at least giving people the confidence to talk about the impact that AI is having on them, now recognizing that it's embedded in a lot of products and services, maybe, and they're using it without even realizing it. And we just allude to bias in AI. We don't go into it in any great detail, but we mention that there are biases in the system related to gender, perhaps, or age, or race, or ethnicity, or culture biases. Speaker notes have a little bit more about that we can go on to. And we point out that the summary of these benefits and risks are on their sheets. And then we ask for activity, take time for a little bit of activity where they might think about one particular benefit and one particular risk that they might see of AI in their life. And again, this generates quite a bit of discussion. So people think about it themselves first, and then we invite them to chat with the table about the benefits and the risks that they see, and write them in again on their worksheet so they can take it away and remind themselves about that. A nice takeaway afterwards. And time permitting, so if we've lots of time, so maybe if you're running this particularly as one 20-minute unit itself, a nice activity here is when they've taken a little bit of time to have the group discussion and write down the benefit and the risk, we ask each table to present one benefit and one risk, or, time permitting, 2 benefits and 2 risks, whatever. You can adopt it depending on the time remaining to do that. And going back to the mis and disinformation, we point out the Media Literacy Ireland campaign, the Stop, Think, Check. And we go through this in detail because the mis and disinformation is very relevant to this group. So we suggest that people stop, think and check if they see some information before they reshare it. So that's one. And we also point out the bmediasmart.ie website from Media Literacy Ireland and commission them on, and indicate that there are a number of resources on that website where you can check out whether with reliable sources, whether the information has been, whether it appears on those sites or not. Again, we mentioned that the summary of all of this is on their sheet. And the second last activity that we ask the participants to do is to go to our glossary, and I'll come back to that on actually I'll just pop over to it here now. And we have our glossary here, and we also have it in our resource. We have our glossary down here of our age-friendly AI top 20 terms that we've developed out in the glossary in plain English. So we point that out to the participants, and there's a glossary for usually accompanying the pack for each participant on their sheet, or we suggest you print that out in advance. And we ask them to use that to complete this activity, where they have 5 terms down on the left-hand side and the 5 definitions over here. And we're asking them to draw lines match up the term with the definition beside it. So that takes a few minutes then. And some they find very easy to do, and some they have to look up the glossary depending on their prior experience with AI. But it's a way of familiarising them with the glossary. The 5 terms that we use here are all in the top 10 terms, so they're all on the front page of the glossary. We have 10 other terms at the back that aren't as prioritised in the space, but are still very important for the literacy piece. And again, that generates a nice bit of conversation. And once again, depending on the time, we go through it together on the board and just call out the terms and pick out where they are on the glossary sheet itself for anyone that didn't get to them. And then we point out the key takeaways from the learning on the module. If we were to highlight them, are these ones here. And we mentioned the stay informed being a very important piece. So to keep up to date with what's going on our website, but also in various content that comes topics that come up on the radio or in media about AI, to keep informed about it. But of course, the audience that we're asking to keep informed are all in front of us, so they're all already practicing that. But we encourage them to encourage others who might not be at the training to have a look maybe at their worksheet or come along to another event that might be happening. And then we finally point out the summary of this whole module is on the worksheet, and we ask them to tick these boxes and reflect on what they've learned today. So they were our learning outcomes from the outset. We finish off with mentioning that there are additional resources on the website. 3 of them are outlined here, including in the glossary, a video that one of my colleagues created to go along with the analogy that we used earlier for the terms with the personal shopper, going into a little bit more detail on it, technically wise, and also the Stop, Think, Check campaign. And then we pop up a link to the resources, which can be adapted if you want to pop up a link to your own organisation's website or somewhere else that you found useful, or however you might like to adapt it.